Okay, we are recording. So, welcome to this masterclass. Um, I'm not going to waste loads of time sort of telling you loads about me and what I do. I think most of the people watching this are probably familiar with me already. But if you're not, feel free to go check out my website, and you can learn all about me there because I just want to use this time to really get into the meat of this topic. And I know we're all busy, so you're here for the manifestation stuff. That's what we're going to talk about. There'll be a chance to ask questions at the end. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. If you have questions as we go through, it would be wonderful if you could just make a note of them on your own notepad. And then that will save me being distracted from seeing the chat pop up. And then I will call for questions towards the end and hopefully be able to answer those for you. And so I just want to tell you, I'm not going to tell you all like who I am and everything, but I do just want to tell you how I stumbled across this, because I think some of the most incredible, helpful information, certainly for me, happens like by accident. And I don't know if other people have this as well. I'm going to guess that you do. But some of my most amazing discoveries on my own journey of personal development have been accidental. They've been things where I'm reading something and I start to piece things together and they make sense. And I do see myself as like a little bit of a, what's the word, like detective in that way, like looking for this kind of helpful information that we can piece together in new ways. And for me, that's a way I express my creativity. And so I tell you that because I actually wasn't looking into manifestation or the manifesting process when I came across this concept that I'm going to share with you. I was actually doing research for the group program that is currently open at the moment. Some of you might have heard of it already, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Woman. So I was doing research on that, and that program is all about helping people move through and raise their levels of consciousness, right? And so much beauty in that. Far too much to go into here. If you want to know more about it, go check out the page. But as part of that, I've been studying something called the Map of Consciousness by David R. Hawkins, which is an incredible thing. And his books are amazing. He's a doctor. He was a psychiatrist for like 30 or 40 years, and he has so much amazing information. And as I was studying this information, and it's huge, by the way, I've been studying this for the last 6 months, and there is still I feel like I've barely scratched the surface of it. But I'm actually going to share my screen so you can see the map of consciousness. Let's see. Hopefully this works. Right, if I turn this on to present. Okay, guys, can you just let me know if you can see, just type in the chat box, if you can see like a colorful image on the screen. Let's see if I can see this. Yay, thanks. Okay, cool. So this is the Map of Consciousness by Dr. David R. Hawkins. Oops, I missed his doctor off here. He is a doctor. Right, this looks a bit confusing. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to explain and describe all the different aspects of this and just explain it so you understand what we're actually looking at here on this map. So these colors here where my mouse is, all of these states like enlightenment, peace, joy, these all are the different levels of consciousness, right? So we start from these very low levels of consciousness and we move up through. And as you can see here, hopefully you can see this white line, there is a kind of crossover point there where you move from trying to force and push and do and hustle for appropriate word for what we're talking about. So you move from all of that into these top states, which is from courage upwards, which is a state of power where you're no longer in that state of like trying to push and force things to happen in your life. You actually move into a set of empowered levels of consciousness, where you can kind of let go of some of that stuff. And I believe that we as a collective, like human beings as a species, are moving currently over this line here from force into power. And I believe that me and probably you, if you're here watching this, are part of that change. Maybe it's why we came here, hey? I certainly believe so. So that is the levels of consciousness. Here's the crossover point from force into power. And then what we have here is what we experience as individuals and collectively when we're in each of these different levels of states. So I'm just going to go through those just to, I mean, I know it's probably pretty clear, but I'm just going to go through this so it's fully making sense. So if we're in a consciousness level of shame, guilt, apathy, grief, or fear, any of those levels of consciousness, if that's what we're experiencing, will create an experience of inaction for us. We will be, unable to do things that we want to do. We'll be unable to create change in our lives. We'll be unable to kind of shift things. We will just be in this kind of state of inaction. And I'm sure that you can think of times in your life when you've been in that state. And I always like to bring this into our real experience, because otherwise ideas like that, this are just concepts and ideas. So let's make it real. I want you to think with me. You don't have to share. You can just write it down in your own notebook or consider it for yourself. When have you been in a place of inaction? Like, when have you been in that kind of real stuck place? For me, I think of when I was working in a corporate job that had really lost its sparkle for me. And I was very much like ashamed of working there. I remember when people used to ask me what I did for a living, even though I had a really pretty good job there, I just used to shrug it off and be like, oh, it's just like I work in insurance. Blah. Anyway, so you can think of times, I'm sure, where you've been in inaction, and you'll be able to see, hopefully, where that correlates on the level of consciousness that you had. Also, at that time, I was dealing with a huge amount of fear and probably some apathy, which is, if you've not come across the word apathy before, or you don't have a full breadth of understanding of what that means, it's like hopelessness. And I really felt like that when I was stuck in this corporate job. And you guys, I stayed in that for, I was in the job in total for nearly a decade. And then I was probably in inaction, like unhappy there for maybe 6 or 7 years. So that is the impact of these levels of consciousness, is just complete inability to create change in our lives. So the next level up, desire, anger, pride, actually creates a state of hyperactivity within us. And I just want to touch on pride for a second, because when I first started like looking at this and learning about it and trying to understand it, I was kind of confused as to why pride was not a good thing. I was like, oh, I think it's great if I'm proud of myself. So I just wanted to touch on that. The difference between pride and healthy self-esteem is that pride is where our ego, our small self, is trying to be recognized and be seen and be validated and get things because we're good and we're amazing and, we deserve it and all of that kind of thing. Whereas like healthy self-esteem comes from the higher self, so that would be much higher up into these levels. Hopefully that makes sense. Desire is there in this kind of force level, and maybe you can start to feel into this yourself. Like when you really, 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 really want something, there's a real sense of like wanting to push and work harder and do it all and make it happen, right? And so, of course, that makes sense that it would take us into hyperactivity, where we are trying to do things all the time, and we just have to try and make it happen. And to give you the personal example still, because I always find personal examples helpful myself, I would have been in this when I first transitioned out of that corporate job and went into my my life coaching business 2.5 years ago now. And I went like full whack into hyperactivity, was signing up for so many trainings, like loads of freebies. I was getting like hundreds of emails a week from people with offers of courses and coaching and all sorts, because I was just in that state of hyperactivity of like, I need this to work. I really want this to work. And I just have this, So, interestingly, I was also pretty damn angry around that time, because the anger for me came from a place of, okay, well, I've taken the leap. I've finally, 7 years come out of this stuff. And this line here, by the way, is like something you have to come over. Like there's an experience of transitioning into a new state. So I was like, and that's where people can feel like they've taken a leap. And so for me, I've like taken this leap of faith and done my training and gone down to part-time hours, and nothing was working still. And so I was also really angry a lot of the time in that, and I felt quite orphaned by the universe. Then we move into this level, this third level here, and we've crossed a really big leap here, because we've gone over from force to power, like I spoke about earlier. Now, when you are in this state, or these 4 blue states, courage, neutrality, willingness, or acceptance, your experience of life is happiness and productivity. Like you're no longer in the stress and the hustle and the force of hyperactivity and trying to do everything. You are taking efficient steps, you are productive, you're feeling good, you trust yourself, life feels easy in many ways compared to what you've been through previously. And so I would say that the last year, I've spent a lot of time the last year really reassessing like what I was doing in my business and how I was feeling, because it really wasn't feeling the way I had hoped and wanted it to. And so I've spent the last year exploring, moving into these states, and let me tell you, that is work, just like all of them are. And what I've noticed is that you'll bounce around a little bit. So, you might come into courage and get that kind of courage you need to really make change and trust and, take a leap again. Even though you'd already taken a leap, you have to take another one into courage. And you might fall back sometimes, but this is cool here. This is there's a shift here where life just does start to feel easy or easier. So then we're coming into the point where I don't have personal examples anymore. So we come up into this point, and reason is on its own. So I'm not going to go deeply into reason in this call, because I haven't even told you about manifestation yet. But I wanted to just tell you that this one is on its own. And here is peak performance without stress. So it's kind of an in-between, because here, when you're in this happiness and productivity state, there's still some stress, there's still some pressure. You're still trying to overcome the ego sometimes, and you still have some real kind of human stuff going on. So you can move up into here, into peak performance with no stress. So you're at the top of your game. You've eliminated all of the stuff that is, inefficient, ineffective. You're doing it all without stress. Life flows. Sounds great, right? And then you come up into this level, and just to give you an awareness of what Dr. David Hawkins says about this, he says that this level is like this enlightenment and peace levels. The types of people, the types of humans that have reached that level are like Jesus and the Buddha. So we're talking, exceptional human beings. It's very, very rare. So when you reach that point, life is completely different than we can probably even comprehend right at this moment, which is a pretty cool thing in my book. Okay, so let me just take a sip of my tea. That was a lot of information. I hope that was helpful for you. And I hope as I've been speaking, you've been seeing, perhaps considering where you are on this at the moment. And of course, we jump around a little bit between these. We're probably rarely just one of them. Okay, so I've been studying this. I didn't even take the sip of tea. So, as I said, I've been studying this for the last 6 months or so. And it was only last week or the week before, whenever it was that I said I was going to do this class, that I saw how unhelpful a lot of the law of attraction steps are that we're told. And I learned about the law of attraction, like many people, through Rhonda Byrne's The Secret many, many, many years ago now, when I was back in this area, working in my corporate job, feeling pretty crappy and not taking any action. So I learned about it there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk you through like the sort of key steps of manifestation that we're told. And I'm going to show you mapping them against this idea of consciousness, just so you can kind of see what I saw and what blew my mind. So I spent a little bit of time Googling yesterday, just sort of looking at, I just typed in like manifestation steps or attraction into Google, and I just looked at lots and lots of different things. And there are sort of 4 key steps that I've found that people tell you to do in manifestation. The first one is to get clear on what you really, really want, right? That's what they say. You have to be super clear. You have to have you have to be able to really see it. And so this is where ideas like vision boards come from, writing like ideal day exercises, ideal life exercise, like all of that kind of stuff comes from like, get clear on your desire. Now, we know, because we've just looked at this map of consciousness, that desire is actually still within the consciousness level of force, and it creates an experience for human beings who are in that consciousness level of hyperactivity. Now, I can certainly relate to that when I was kind of practicing that manifestation in this way actively. That's totally how it felt for me. So I'm wondering if that's how it feels for you too. So that's the first step that they tell you. The second step they tell you is to act as if you already have it. Like really bring it to life through your senses and, consider like how it will really feel and like really get into the experience of it. Often this is also accompanied by the narrative of like, you deserve it. Like you have to believe that you already deserve this and you have to be willing to receive it, right? And so for me, when I look at this, I'm like, actually, that has the potential of really taking people into pride, of really taking them into, and, I totally did this when I was practicing law of attraction steps like this, of like really trying to get into that place of, I deserve this. Like, this is why I'm here. And also this idea of like, I am a powerful creator and I create this. This is interesting because, and sorry, just to go off on a slightly separate note here, but I think it's going to add something, is we can also think of these consciousness levels in a few different ways. So we could look at this one as like to me consciousness, like things are happening to me. It's like a victim state. And then we can think of this next one as by me. I create things, I make it happen, right? And then we can think of this one, and probably reason as well, as through me. Things, creation happens through me. And then we can think of this one as me. I am this. So I just wanted to add that in because I think it adds something to understanding why believing you already have it and believing it's yours and you can create it and you're powerful might take you into pride and into this like by me consciousness, like I've made this happen. Cool. So that is the second step that they tell you. The third step that they tell you is to take action, right? And this can look like so many different things. Sometimes this can be like, depending on who's teaching the law of attraction to you and that kind of thing, sometimes this part could be really helpful and could be like, take inspired action, like take action when it's coming through you, which would take you up here, right? But what I see happening over and over and over again is that take action looks like, I came across something in this research for this, which was called the 555 method. And I don't know if I'd never heard of this before, but the idea was that for 5 days, you write out your affirmation of what you want 55 times. So you've got people sat there writing an affirmation 55 times a day for 5 days as part of their manifestation process. And my goodness me, if that's not hyperactivity, I don't know what is. And so depending on how it's described in this point, the third step of manifestation keeps you in hyperactivity. Now, what I would say is that anything coming from here, anything below this line, anything that's in this fourth section is not going to create a manifestation that actually works in your reality. Like anything you do from those rubber levels isn't going to create something to manifest. So why does manifestation sometimes work? Because I've had it work for me, and I might tell you a little story about that in a minute. But it works because of the fourth tip that most manifestation teachers and teachings say, which is surrender. Let it go, all right? Trust that it's coming. Don't stress out about it anymore. Just let it come to you. That final step takes you up into, across this line, over into power, because when you're in a state of surrender, when you're in a state of like, I'm going to allow this to come to me, I'm going to be open to receiving, you're then in a state of acceptance, a state of willingness, a state of neutral. You're no longer grasping at it. You're no longer trying to make it happen or force it to happen. You're letting it come to you. Your resistance has been dropped. So this is why it sometimes works, because through those manifestation steps, you might get to the point where you can learn to surrender to the point where you move into this happiness and productivity state momentarily or for short amounts of time, which is then when the manifestation can come through. And so the manifestation comes through and you're like, oh, it worked. Okay, I'm going to go and do that again. And maybe you decide to do it on something bigger. or something that feels more close to your chest, something you really, really, really desire, something you really believe that you should have. And of course, it takes you back down here. And the problem is with this, and this is why I'm so sad about the fact that so many people are kind of doing these law of attraction steps without this kind of wisdom underneath it, is because, you know, what happens when you don't manifest, when it doesn't work, is it actually has the potential to take you back even lower. You might feel fear that this manifestation that you were relying on isn't going to come through or hasn't come through. You might feel grief over that if it was something really important to you. You might feel anger. You know, it might not take you all the way down into that purple section. It might keep you in hyperactivity, might make you desire it even more. And if you can just believe enough, then you get it. This is the problem, in my opinion, with manifestation and the way it's currently being taught broadly. You know, I work in the coaching industry and I see these steps over again. And look, the people teaching this stuff have good hearts, nothing against them at all. It's a misunderstanding. And because it sometimes works, it's kind of hard to think, well, I'm not going to do that anymore, because sometimes it might help someone. Sometimes it might work. I appreciate that was probably a lot of information in one go. So I'm gonna just stop my screen share for a moment. And if you want a copy of this map of consciousness, then you are welcome to have it. Okay, am I back? Can you let me know I'm back? Hopefully you can see me. I'm going to carry on. I'm back. Thank you, Abby. Cool. So I feel like the need to just like take a breath there and like shake some of that off, because when I realized this stuff, I was just like, damn, if I had learned this like before all that time I'd spent manifesting, I would have been like so much further ahead by now. But everything happens in its perfect timing. So what I want to do is, all I really wanted to do today in today's workshop was just share this discovery and share this information, because I think that my approach to things in everything I do is to kind of share something and then let it land with people. Let people take the time to truly digest it and process what that means for their life. Because, you know, for me, and perhaps like, you know, hopefully it's impacting you in the same way that it impacted me when I saw that, is like, it made me think, wow, there's really probably quite a lot that I need to change in my life about how I go about creating things in my life. And there's probably a lot of work emotionally, mentally, materially, spiritually, that I need to step through to be able to move across that barrier from force into power. I have spent the last year working towards that, and you know, taking those steps and addressing all of the stuff that comes up as a result. So I don't feel like I'm in a position in a masterclass like this one, a short, sweet masterclass that I told you wasn't going to take up loads of your time, into going into like how we move through the levels of consciousness. If you are interested in learning that, it is what my group program is all about, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Woman. You can go and have a look at that. But essentially, that is a 9-month-long process, because I don't believe you can kind of, there's no quick fix, there's no jump, there's no trick to kind of jumping through levels of consciousness. It takes time, it takes work. Is it worth it? Of course it is. So all I want to finish up with as we move into this kind of towards the end of this class is to encourage you to look at times in your life when you have been able to manifest something, and get the map of consciousness. I'll send it out to the email list after this call with the replay. Is to look at the map of consciousness and kind of map over when you were able to manifest something in your life. Where were you? What were the steps you took? How did that happen? And this is, I really encourage you to do this because, and this is something again that's really important for me in my work. I don't want to just tell you that this is it. Like, this is the truth. This is the truth. I understand it, so here it is. Like, that's not really what I want to do in my work. I want to give you information so that you can then go into your own lives and look at it and be like, does this match up for me? Does this make sense for me? Have I seen this in my own life or not? And then you get to decide whether this is relevant for you or not. For some people, this is going to be so helpful. For others, it might not resonate at all, and that's totally fine. But yeah, I really encourage you to look at a time when it worked, map it across, see where the steps were, see if this is true for you in your own life, and also look at the times where it's not working, or perhaps you have a goal right now that you're working towards, and you feel like it's far away, or you feel like it's not working. Where are you in relation to that goal or that dream, compared to the level of consciousness? Like, which level are you at? And can you see the correlation in the experience of that? Like, is that what's happening for you? I really encourage you to take the steps to do that, because then you will prove to yourself whether or not this information is real, whether it's true. I said I might tell you the iPad story, so I'm going to briefly tell you the iPad story, and I'm just going to bring the screen back up because I think it will help. Here we go. Oh, did I press it? I did not press it. So when I was doing the law of attraction with like the secret method, like the steps I just told you, I manifested an iPad, and it's a really cool story, so I am going to share it. So there's the law of it, like the secret steps are very similar to these. Get clear on what you really want. And they said, ask for something that's like kind of smaller, like, you know, don't ask to win £1 million, basically. Like, ask for something that feels possible. So I think at the time iPads were about £400. This is a long time ago. And I was like, okay, an iPad would be great. So I printed off the magic check. I don't know if anyone else has done these magic checks before, but I printed off the magic check and I wrote on it £400 to buy an iPad. And I put it on my wall next to my bed, and so I'd see it every morning. And so that was me being in like desire, right? I was in desire. And believe you already have it, make it seem real. So every morning before I even got up out of bed, before my feet touched the floor, I would like imagine myself in bed holding this iPad, like playing with it, like doing whatever I was doing, and believing that I already had it. And that was taking me into this level of pride of like, yeah, I just have an iPad. Like, even though I've got a laptop and a phone, I can have this, like that kind of thing. So take action, right? I was like doing all the action, I was doing the affirmations, I was looking at it every morning, I was like looking out for it, like being open to it, all of that stuff. I was like saying thank you, doing gratitude lists, like I had a vision board, I think, like I was doing all the stuff. So I was fully in hyperactivity. But then, you know what's coming. The final step was like the surrender part, right? Which was like willingness, being neutral, acceptance. And I was so this was when I worked a mail job, and I was at a conference in London, and we were all about to go, and we've been like milling around before the conference, having coffee, like networking. And just before we were about to go in, one of my bosses came up to me and said, Emma, there's a competition over there to win an iPad. All you have to do is put your business card in. So I was like, universe, you got me. I see what's happening. And so I walked over there, and this is the part, right? This is the part where I went into willingness and acceptance. I was just about to put my card in, and someone else who I didn't know, a man, came up to me and said, you should put 10 cards in so you increase your chances of winning, right? That, if I'd have done that, I'd be like straight back here to desire, maybe even down here to guilt, right? But instead, I was like, no, I am surrendering this. I trust the universe. I know this is coming to me. So I just put one card in, and I felt so good about that. I felt so neutral. I was like, if it's not this iPad, another one's going to come. Maybe this is just showing up to show me the way. So I was neutral. I was willing to just put one card in and trust. And I was just in that. I really moved into this place. And I won. I won the iPad. I manifested the iPad, right? It's such a cool story, but I'm so intrigued as to what would have happened if I'd have put 10 in. I don't think I'd have won. Who knows? But it's a cool story, and so I wanted to share that with you. So I would love for you to do this yourself. I'm going to stop sharing so you can actually see me. Yeah. So I would love for this, for you to go and apply this to your own lives. I think that, just this information itself could be really life-changing, and that's what I want it to be for you. So yes, that is, I think, everything I wanted to share with you. So I would love to open up to questions. You are welcome to either type a question into the chat or unmute and turn your video on and ask me anything about this. So let's see. If you don't have any questions, that is absolutely fine as well. I'll just leave it a second because I know this can take a little while to come through. So while I'm waiting for you guys to decide if you have any questions, I do want to tell you about Ancient Wisdom Modern Woman. I know I've mentioned it a couple of times in this session, and it's because I believe in it so much. Like, the whole premise is to raise your levels of consciousness so you can live in that state of happiness and productivity. Because, as I said, I've been in those other states. It's not fun. I'm sure you know it's not fun. And for the last year, I've been actively moving myself into that blue level, and life is so much kinder. So I really want that for you as well. So you can go to my website for that, or send me an email, hello@thewildflowercircle .com. And just to let you know on that as well, there is an early bird offer if you decide to come and join me for this incredible, life-changing, life-affirming, enhancing experience with a group of other amazing women. Then if you decide to do that before the 29th of February, you also get a bonus one-on-one session with me. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Abby, I'm glad that it feels like food for thought. You're so welcome, and thank you for being here. I would really love anyone who either joined live or is watching this on the replay. If you feel like you want to drop me an email with your takeaway, any aha moments, or a story about how manifestation applies in this way, and if you decide to do that, I'd love to hear about it. I love hearing from you. So yeah, feel free to email me, and that's it. Have a beautiful day. Lots of love.